My name is Chris Knotts. It's ChrisKnotts. I'm a product director for a company named C Prime. We're a consulting firm. We help basically really large organizations solve technology problems, apply design thinking to sophisticated technology products and services. We help them manage programs and projects. There's a lot of process and a lot of design that's involved, but it's not graphic design or visual design. It's about technology solutions, and I'm responsible basically for R&D and designing learning programs for customers like that.
Could you tell us about the journey from being a student towards achieving this current job?
Sure. So that's a long journey because I'm getting to be kind of an old guy, but my current position title is as a product director, and specifically I'm in charge of R&D at a technology training company. So I've been in sort of the corporate design world for a long time. The way that journey started was I studied graphic design and environmental design at the ECU School of Art. Was always interested in visual arts and graphics and all of the traditional studio media, painting, drawing, etc., and had a certain talent for it. So I really wanted to make my living in that field. But I was also a bit of a pragmatist, so I thought, well, I need to figure out some way that I can make money. So I figured that was graphic design. So I got my degree in graphics in '99, graduated, and immediately took a position in Atlanta as a sort of a corporate production artwork designer. And I think this is a common journey for a lot of graduates of these programs because if they're like me, and I don't know if they are, but I had a real vision of sort of working in like an advertising studio or a graphic design studio or something like that. But I quickly found out that the vast majority of design jobs were sort of in corporate America, or small, medium-sized business America. Everybody needs graphics and advertising and layout and these types of things. So uh, took a job in Atlanta doing that. That progressed to sort of a project management type job. After that, I moved back to North Carolina and took a job as a contractor, which led to me starting my own sort of small design and marketing agency. Did that for a number of years. That job exposed me to web design. There was a lot of traditional print layout still. We did a lot of brochure design, a lot of copy layout, a lot of sort of web advertising, and it also exposed me to skills that were on the periphery of graphic design, like mail planning and customer databases and things like that. And that was very interesting. And so the more that I worked in the design field and learned about sort of marketing in general, and marketing was a sort of a broader umbrella. I was a basically an individual contractor providing graphic services and design services, but I reported to the larger marketing department in my clients, all my clients' organizations. Now, eventually, I took a full time position with one of those clients, and that position exposed me to a lot more marketing functions than just graphics and just design. I started to learn about sales as I interacted with the sales department. I started to learn about product as I interacted with the product management department. I started to learn about sort of just a lot of more general business skills, and I was still delivering design products this whole time, layout, web design, especially web design. Uh, and But the more that I was exposed to those things, the more I gained literacy in the market domain areas that my company was working in, and a lot of that stuff was very interesting. And I eventually moved from an individual contributor's role as a designer into more of a sort of a general marketing role. And in between there, they gave me a position as creative director. So I managed a team of designers and web designers and print designers and things like that. And as I did that, I interacted more and more with sort of general business needs. And I began to develop more literacy around the larger needs of the business, which was really interesting. And I found that I had talents that extended beyond just kind of graphics or visual design, and I had talents which could apply to enabling my sales team and delivering marketing materials that might be very targeted outside of just a general graphic sense. So eventually, I think I just read enough copy when I was doing web and brochure layouts that I eventually absorbed a lot of literacy around the domain area that my training company employer was doing, and I started to understand enough about the business space that I started to kind of sort of understand some of the product market fits. And I was also a technology geek, so eventually they went way out on a limb and gave me a job in R&D as a product guy, and that's how I got into product. And then lo and behold, here we are today. I'm not involved in what you would think of as conventional design, although design still plays a big role. But I'm not really involved in a graphics or a visual design role at all. I'm kind of in like an R&D role and a product director role. So
Along the way, you have talked about starting with an initial skill set, but then has branched off to lead to something a little bit higher along the route for you. Um, do you think that you might be able to say something just for a second or so about the willingness to learn a new skill and whether how that might open doors into a future job role?
yes, so the thing that I would say about that is, for one thing, I think it's kind of a cliched statistic that's bandied about that the typical person coming out of an academic program today will have, I think it's something like 4 or 5 career changes in their life. And then specifically if you're young, you may have a vision of doing something that you're going to stick with throughout your entire career. But I think I would just say you can't underestimate how much you're going to learn and how much your journey is going to change as you gain experience and all kinds. If you do well in your journey and with your experience, all kinds of doors are going to open up. And a lot of those doors are going to lead to paths that may not be specifically on a kind of a graphic designer's path, or a layout path or a web design path. And you have to keep your mind open to those opportunities because you're not defined as just a designer. You're defined as a professional who is in it to grow their career. And there's limitless career opportunities that you can't even imagine right now, which may or may not have directly to do with design. So the second point that I would make about that is that when you enter the workforce as a designer, or someone who's working in a field that's related to design, you typically go in a functional role that's as an individual contributor. Now, an individual contributor can be any number of types of person, right? And it's a type of person that contributes specific skills for a specific need. So if you're in layout, you might be in graphics or print graphics or advertising. If you're a web designer, you may start out with sort of using frameworks or CSS or maintaining web presences, but of course you're going to find very quickly that those skills are going to kind of start to overlap other needs. If you're for instance responsible for web design, you're very quickly going to be exposed to sort of other general software and application development skills, version control, back end technologies that are responsible for powering those web presences. So you may think of yourself as a quote unquote designer, but you're going to start getting into various technology dependencies, and those things can lead to careers all their own. Um, but the point I wanted to make is that as an individual contributor, your power is limited. And it's a great way to enter the workforce. But as you pursue a career path, you're going to find that the truly large initiatives can only be tackled as a team. And if you do well in your career as a designer, at your point of entry into the market, you're going to find that as you progress, you're going to get tasked with larger responsibilities, larger projects, bigger budgets, bigger outcomes that your superiors expect from you, and those things are going to mean figuring out how to work with more people, how to work with teams, and then ultimately probably how to recruit and lead teams. Because truly larger outcomes, there's going to be a limit to how much you can achieve those outcomes as an individual contributor. So that was a really important piece of my journey. Was in I started out sort of having this vision that I would be kind of a Don Draper Mad Men style guy who was a genius creative, and I would work in an agency or something like that. But the reality is the vast majority of individual contributors in the design field work for corporate employers, and there's a lot of very cool work to be done there. But at the end of the day, a graphic designer or even a web designer is kind of an individual contributor, which is really a fairly low rung on the corporate totem pole, to mix a metaphor. And if you're going to progress, you're going to need to expand the outcome focus of your job beyond just design production. You're going to need to start to think about the business needs that your clients have, or your internal business clients have, and those needs depend on a lot of things besides just graphics, besides just design. And if you can start to come up with creative solutions for those things, you can add a lot of value. And I think that's the thing that was really exciting about my journey, was that as a designer you learn skills to solve visual problems or communication problems. A lot of those skills aren't just limited to problem solving in the graphics field. Those skills can be applied for other business needs, for other needs that scale far beyond just the individual contributor role of a graphic designer or some other kind of designer. So that's the second point I wanted to make. If you're trying to progress a career, learning design skills is a great entry point, but you don't need to be an individual contributor forever. You can apply those skills in roles which allow you to lead teams or lead projects or to manage bigger outcomes, to work with bigger business needs that entail working with a lot more people. So individual contributor is the beginning of the road, not the end. If you're truly committed to kind of a career in the modern world.
It can be kind of difficult to see yourself in a spot where, if you are a good enough graphic designer, you get farther and farther and farther from producing actual graphic design work every time you get a bigger career and a slightly better, higher rung. What's it like to manage creatives in the workplace? What's it like to work with other individual designers or developers?
Well, it's interesting. Designers are a special breed, I find, and I can say this being one. And I still do apply design skills from time to time. And when I say design skills, I mean sort of conventional layout and graphics. Every once in a while, there's still a need, and I keep my skills sharp. But as I said, as you're grappling with bigger and bigger needs and bigger outcomes, you are going to need to progress into a leadership role. I think the key to managing creative professionals or professional team of designers is it's really the same as any successful management rubric, which is to remember that people want to feel like their input is valued. You can't think of a creative team as just another piece of software that you're clicking the mouse on. You're art directing them to some very specific creative solution, especially when creative solutions, there is a significant element of subjectivity. And there's always more than one way to achieve the solution. So I almost think that, when you're leading the team, your specific understanding of what the solution looks like actually becomes less important than developing the skills to empower your team. And so even if something that a team member of yours presents that you think, well, this might not look the best, there's probably a better way to do this. That's actually not the thing that's most important, correcting them and saying, well, why don't you do this instead? Well, you're not the designer, you're the leader. And leadership is a completely different skill set. as a leader, you want to build confidence in the people on your team. You want to encourage them to take risks. You want to encourage them um, to work hard and take a real interest in the design problem they're trying to solve. And those things can be really at a counter with maintaining creative control. So that's a hard thing. Any designer wants to maintain creative control, I think, by instinct. But if you're going to lead other designers, you have to start learning about leadership, and that's a set of human skills and management skills that are completely separate from visual design skills. And for a designer who started as an individual contributor and as a designer themselves, it can sometimes be hard to step away from that sort of, creative execution, design execution. I know how this should be done, especially when you're leading people who are sometimes more junior to you, and maybe their design skills aren't as honed as yours, and maybe their solutions are a little more clumsy. Maybe their execution is a little more clumsy. It's very easy to start, uh, really trying to manipulate their actual graphic solution, and that's a natural and intuitive thing to do, but it's a really wrong thing to do. If you're going to shift your uh, career direction to leadership of a team, you really want to focus on the fact that if you can empower your team, eventually their solutions and their execution is going to look as good or better than yours. But the pathway to that lays through giving them freedom, trusting them, building trust, stoking their motivation, and giving them the confidence to be able to present things. Even if you go to market with uh, design products that are obviously subpar to what you would produce, sometimes it's best as a leader just to keep your mouth shut and let that roll. It might still meet the business need. And that's what you really have to be focused on. It's not about producing the best possible aesthetic solution as a team leader. It's about, does this meet the business need? And if it does, then all of the rest of your energy can be directed towards empowering your team. And if you can do that incrementally, pretty soon you're going to have a really powerful team who's kicking butt on the design side of things.
Excellent. What are some essential requirements when you are trying to manage multiple projects at one time?
Well, every designer or anybody in a white collar and knowledge based industry, really probably any industry, who's committed to a certain career path is going to have to learn how to develop proficiency managing multiple projects and multitasking. Um, this is something we could talk about for days. So I'll try to keep it somewhat simple. Um, I think that the first thing that you really have to learn is the importance of managing priorities. And to do that, as somebody who has a certain set of skills or a certain expertise. If you're a designer, if you have web skills, or if you have developer skills, if you have any technology skills, whether it's Photoshop or whether it's HTML, or whether it's like being a Java developer, and all these things can bleed into each other. You have a certain talent set that other people in your client pool or in your business are going to be asking you to do for them, and you're always going to have competing asks. And so it's very important to set up a process for um, capturing and tracking and then managing priorities. Multitasking is kind of a cliche in the business world. The reality is, like, multitasking is not really very good. When people say multitasking, what they really mean is the ability to deliver to multiple priorities. So it's very important to understand how to prioritize. And in order to do that, you have to have very close communication with the stakeholders or the customers who are asking you to do the thing. And then you have to manage your time, or more importantly, manage your priorities and work hard. I think if you work your 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day or whatever it is, but you're always understanding how to devote the most of your attention and the most of your creative energy and the most of your time to the most important thing. So that would be the main skill I would say is understanding how to navigate priorities, especially when you're in a world of competing priorities. And for that, you really just have to have honesty to your customers and stakeholders, and that works pretty well. And most customers and stakeholders are pretty receptive to that. If you're just honest with them, you don't promise them the world when you know you've got four other requests waiting in the wings and there's not going to be enough hours in the day to deliver. You just tell them, okay, it's going to be 3 days until I can deliver a draft or something like that. So it's really priorities would be the number one thing.
In here, you're talking about making promises and delivery. Could you talk for just a minute on over-promising and under-delivering? Is this something that happens a lot? Is it something that can be avoided? What are your thoughts on this process?
Yeah, great leading question. So over promising and under delivering. So the first answer is that's the opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is under promise and over deliver, and that can be a very difficult thing to do. Intuitively, especially as creative professionals, and especially if you're just entering into your professional path, you don't ever want to disappoint anybody. And the more talented you are, the more capable you are, the more you're going to feel the pressure of customers or business consumers of your skills. They're going to be pressuring you to deliver, and it may feel like those things are hard and fast needs. The world's going to end if you can't deliver. That's really not ever the case. The reality is all those stakeholders are just trying to get their thing done. They're going to be pursuing it. They're going to be passionate about it. And you have to learn how to push back against that stuff. And when I say push back, I don't mean really saying no. I just mean saying, somebody may come to you and they might say, I need X piece of design produced. I need this ASAP. That's a big thing in business. People always want things ASAP. Well, just that's reasonable. Just be honest. I think as a design professional, it's easy to feel like when they say, I need this thing ASAP, they feel like it feels like they're saying, I need it now, or I need it tomorrow, or I need it in 2 days. And that's not always true. You'd be amazed. Sometimes these business customers, they could get by. It might be weeks or months before they actually need the thing, but you don't always have a sense of that. So I always start by asking just straight up saying, when do you need this? Realistically, when do you need it? And a lot of times I find that what they respond with is actually a lot of times it's a longer time horizon than you might have thought yourself. The key here is managing expectations. That's what it's all about. And that makes all the difference. If somebody comes to you and they need a thing, and you say, when do you need it? And they say, ASAP, ASAP. You feel the pressure. You say, okay, well, maybe I can fit you in tomorrow. And then, you overcommitted. You have too much stuff. You don't get it tomorrow. And so it's the day after. Well, at this point, you're disappointing your customer or your internal consumer. But the reality is they probably didn't even need that thing until next week. They weren't the one that said tomorrow. You were. Because you were trying to please them. Don't worry about trying to intuitively please them when they are pressuring you to deliver. Give them an honest answer and then add a buffer. That's what overpromising and under delivering is all about. You don't want to overpromise and under deliver. You want to under promise and over deliver. Under promising may seem daunting, because you're pushing back. You're saying, I don't think I can do it by then. 9 times out of 10, a business customer is going to be fine with really, honestly, whenever you can get it to them. The thing that's more important is the quality of what you deliver and the fact that you do what you say you're going to do. That, I think, it really needs to be the North Star for any creative professional or designer. It's just so easy to get overwhelmed with multiple asks, different projects, urgent needs, and pretty soon you're letting people down. It's much better to push back or to be honest about what your bandwidth is. Tell them realistically when you can deliver it. Add a day, deliver it a day early. They'll be thrilled. you'll be their favorite provider. It's all about managing expectations, and you'll find you have a lot of leeway on how you manage those expectations.
Excellent. When you have material that you are presenting to someone higher up than you, or maybe a group of your peers, how important is the presentation of that material? Um, does the way that you present that material, does it affect or have any outcome on how the work is perceived or how the work is received?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I feel like this is a skillfully leading question. Here's what I will say. The further you go in a professional career in design or otherwise, the more important presentation skills get. The ability to speak to a group, and of course, the further you progress in your career, the more senior the type of people you're going to be presenting to. So, you might start out presenting to your teammates or to your immediate supervisor, or to a point of contact to the client. That's important. But the more you progress, the more you're going to be presenting to entire teams or more leadership people, um, or eventually executive level people, senior stakeholders, or increasingly maybe entire conferences full of people. You might find yourself presenting in front of a room of hundreds or even thousands of people. Um, Presentation skills become very important. And I think presentation is a craft all of its own. There's a public speaking component. There's a confidence component. There's also a graphics and design component in that, whatever content you present that you're speaking to, whether it's slides or concepts or boards of design ideas, or some kind of design product that you've produced, or increasingly as you move on in your career, maybe it's some non-design thing, like maybe it's a strategy, or maybe it's a business plan, or something like that. Um, Good, solid graphic communication never is diminished in its importance. In fact, it grows, because the more senior and the more you progress, and the busier and more senior and more highly paid people are that you're presenting to, typically the busier they are, the shorter their attention spans are, and the faster that you have to be able to convey your idea. As a designer, that gets really important. And it's actually a good thing. It's a great thing for designers to be able to hone their skills, get your ideas across fast, communicate effectively in the blink of an eye. The value of the first impression. You can communicate more in the first impression, that first slide, or that first two slides, or the first look that a stakeholder has at your design idea. Those 5-10 seconds that they see your idea, even before you begin to talk or to present, that's going to carry half the weight of their opinion about what you're presenting. And these are skills that are fundamental to a designer. So whether you're a junior designer, an individual contributor first coming out of school, or whether you're achieving a very senior level in your career, presentation skills are crucial. Being confident and learning how to speak in front of groups, learning how to speak to very senior people, and speak with a convincing tone, and designing whatever content accompanies your presentation is very important.
For the creatives that you work with on a regular basis, what kinds of software do they work with on a daily basis? Is it something that is mainly Photoshop oriented? Do they do a lot of Illustrator work? Is it mainly InDesign? For your graphic design people, what is the software of choice, and what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I mean, so I work with a number of folks in marketing, and a number of graphic designers, and a number of brand professionals. Um, I think I think Photoshop holds a special place. I've seen programs come and go over the last 20, 25 years. Photoshop sustains its position as the leading image editing software, and Adobe has done a great job of keeping up with the needs. So Photoshop for sure. From there, when it comes to layout and other dynamic graphics, my teams use Illustrator. I think Illustrator is still heavily used in sort of the pure play design world. I don't think my teams use it that much. They use InDesign and they use other image editing software that's not quite as specialized as like a vector-based design product like Illustrator. I think Illustrator is important, but I think what I see is Illustrator is really fundamentally it's still kind of a 2D design tool. Um, and when you think about 2D design, Photoshop is obviously super important because it's image editing, and you're never going to have a substitute for just editing 2D images. But Illustrator it was a lot more important when I came up 15, 20 years ago because there was a lot more 2D layout. These days, 2D layout isn't as much about print as it is about web and interactive. So even if you're looking at a 2D screen or kind of pane of glass presentation, it's not static layout. And I still kind of think of Illustrator as kind of a static 2D design tool. But they use my teams use tools that are really more about interactive content, content management. So a lot of it's still kind of back end systems. How is copy managed? How do you feed content out to the consumer, especially on the web? I mean, that's really important. So web architectures, UX UI, I think is way more important than something like Illustrator. Photoshop holds a special place, but definitely website management, and also I would say too, outside of design, kind of ways to manage your projects and your workflows are just as important these days. So things like Trello, or I don't know, maybe like other sort of project or product management tools. Those things are just as important. Ways to coordinate your work with your teams. I think in terms of sort of pure play tools, things like Adobe Captivate or something like that. Other tools for managing like interactive experiences, those things are really important. So, the world of just pure play, two-dimensional design, layout, things that are going to get printed in a magazine ad, it still happens, but it's a minority of the design products that you're going to be asked to produce. The one exception is Photoshop because you're always going to need to be able to manipulate images and photos, and those things get plugged into all kinds of modality.
Hmm. Um, what kind of soft skills are good for working in a creative environment? Are there some that are more helpful to be part of a team, or are there some that are more helpful dealing with clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of soft skills, but the first one is the ability to communicate, and that's I think fundamental to design success in the first place. Because even if you're a dork in your basement who can't interact with other people, if you're a good designer, you're figuring out how to solve communication problems. Being a good graphic designer or a good producer of design solutions is not really about visual talent or being a talented artist. It's about being able to understand a problem, and it's about understanding an audience. And that's where real success comes from in being a designer, is in understanding what's the problem you're trying to solve, what's the visual communication solution that you're going to use to solve that problem, and who's the audience that you're going to deliver that solution to. So communication is key at multiple levels, and we start to work with teams, work with other people, engage in higher levels of business. The ability to effectively communicate is the main one. And then there's other tangential soft skills that are related to that. You can't communicate effectively if you are hypersensitive to criticism, for instance. And the further you get in the professional world, the more you're going to have to learn how to expose yourself to criticism, so that you can improve. You're also going to have to learn how to deliver criticism and constructive feedback to other people so that your teammates can improve. There's no improvement without feedback. But especially when you're first entering into your career path, it can be easy to be sensitive, and it's hard to take feedback. And the reality is, especially at the beginning of your career path, you don't know it all. There's going to be a lot of things you could do better, and you have to be able to be receptive to that. And you're only going to learn that stuff by listening to feedback from other people. So that's tangentially related to communication, but that's another soft skill in and of itself. Self-awareness and developing your self-awareness, developing a thick skin, understanding that giving and receiving constructive criticism is a good thing. It's about improvement. You want to get better. And I think a commitment to improvement and getting better is in itself a really important soft skill. And then, I mean, I think just from there, you building trust with other people, I think is a really important one. Being consistent about what you deliver, doing what you say you're going to do, managing expectations, which we talked about earlier, is a really important soft skill that takes practice. And those are just a few. I mean, there's a whole universe of soft skills, but the soft skills are all really about respecting other people as human beings, and also having confidence and respecting yourself, learning how to fearlessly engage with other people to get things done.
If we could stand on your shoulders for just a minute, what's one hard fought lesson that you have learned in moving from being a student to your current situation? What's a pitfall that we could avoid?
Well, this probably varies by person, but for me personally, and I think a pitfall that I observe from other people in my field, um, it is a tendency to shy away from difficult or awkward situations. And if you're going to have professional success, those situations come more frequently, faster, and more furiously the further you go. So it's very important to learn how to really lean in and embrace those scenarios. Don't uh, don't take things personally, and don't take offense when you make a misstep, especially when you're at the beginning of your design career or really in a career. You're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to cause fallout or consequences in your professional situation. um, you'll learn very quickly um, to be honest about those things, or else you're going to have detriment to your career, because people are going to they're not going to be they're not going to feel like they can easily approach you about issues or something like that. So I don't know, maybe rambling a little bit on that one, but I think just understanding that you want to maintain humility, and you want to maintain a sense of confidence, while also understanding that you're really there to please somebody else, and that's really the key to success, I think, as a producer of a design solution, right? You're trying to solve somebody else's problem. You're trying to solve a market need. Everything's external to you. It's not about you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Especially people who kind of come into a design career path with a certain talent. They're talented in visual art, or they're good at drawing, or they're good with computers, or they're good with software. They're good with some sort of design specialty. A lot of times people take a lot of pride in that talent, and that's as it should be. But if you're going to start to apply the products of that talent to solve a business need, or to solve a communication need, or to attack some audience that's in the market, it's really not about your talent. It's about how can you use your talent to produce a valuable solution and ultimately a valuable outcome. And that's something that's completely outside yourself. So you have to learn how to humble yourself and focus on, what's the need that you're meeting, what's the problem that you're solving, and setting aside kind of your own ego. That was a lesson for me. It took time to learn that, but I think I've made progress with it, and it's definitely increased my success for sure. So I would say I'm a design generalist, but I do want to make one important point. Design thinking as a topic is a hot topic right now outside of visual design. Because if you think about the design process that you learn as you're learning how to do graphic design or typography or layout or web design or UX, UI, or anything like that, um, it's really a problem solving process. And you're probably familiar with this, right? You have a certain design problem or certain communication problem, and you're going to create a visual solution to address that problem and deliver it to a certain audience. Well, that scenario extends way beyond just visual design or graphic design, and the business world is really waking up to that right now in 2020. Uh, Design thinking is a really hot topic, and but they're not talking about visuals or graphics. They're talking about how do we define problems and how do we bring a repeatable and scalable process to solving those problems. And the concepts and the processes and the skills that are being used to solve problems like that are the very same processes and skills that we use to solve visual problems and graphic design problems. And I just think that's really interesting. The skills that you learn to be an effective designer apply way beyond just graphics or just layout or just web, or even UX UI. Those types of skills, the ability to um, engage in design thinking, the ability to ideate, the ability to brainstorm and to produce weird possibilities that may or may not solve the problem, and then to learn how to start to boil those down and to refine their feasibility, and then test them. Those are skills that apply to so many different areas of professional life. And I think that's really exciting because, if you're committed to being a visual designer, a graphic designer, that's great. But if what you're really into, as I was ultimately making the most money, having the most success in my professional career, there's all kinds of ways you can apply pure play design skills that starts to extend way outside of just graphics or just visual design. The world needs more creative thinkers, not just for graphics. There's all kinds of problems in the world that really require the same type of creative process that we use to solve visual problems.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You know it.
You're the man.